During the Mesozoic, the dinosaurs were not the only family of reptiles to take over the world. The skies were filled with countless species of pterosaurs, and in the Cretaceous period, they have evolved some of their most spectacular forms. Tupandactylus has taken the development of its crest to likely the most extreme of any of its family. With a 5-meter wingspan and standing almost as tall as a person, this species, Tupandactylus imperator, sports a backward-facing crest that in males is so large, it is a wonder they can hold their head up, let alone fly. Instead of feeding on fish, their diet is much broader, and instead of feeding on the wing, they spend much of their time foraging on the ground. The semi-open areas of this region often have multiple Tupandactylus striding across the fields in search of food. They are searching for fruiting plants, whether they are on the ground or hanging from trees, snipping at them with their blunt beaks and swallowing them individually, taking extra care not to pop any of the softer fruits and spray their meal in all directions. As they forage, it is clear that there are two different variants, females with their smaller duller crests, and males with their huge flamboyant crests. Each of them isn't born with such ornamentation. They only start to grow once an individual nears maturity. For some, there are more growing pains than for others. One young male is struggling with his fast-growing head ornamentation. Sometimes he lowers his head and his crest pulls him down. Other times he'll be flying, and when he turns his head slightly, the crest gets buffeted by the wind, almost causing him to spiral out of control. These are all parts of growing up as a Tupandactylus, but the most taxing part is how it inhibits his hunting. Either when gliding on the wing or moving on the ground, he is finding it hard to catch prey with his constantly growing handicap. He can survive on fruit, but there is only so much to go around, and he needs meat in order to round out his diet. Today, however, he may be in luck. Scurrying between the trees is a small Ubanjara, a small compsognathid. This one is only 50 centimeters long, but more importantly, he has an injured left leg, causing him to limp. Normally, the Tupandactylus wouldn't have a chance catching an agile little dinosaur such as this, but both his hunger and the prey's injury are pushing the odds in the pterosaur's favor. When the Ubanjara moves behind a tree out of sight of the Tupandactylus, the young male walks towards his target, since the small dinosaur can't see him. Despite the wing membranes that connect his arms, legs, and torso, the pterosaur is quite lithe on the ground, and moves to the tree before the Ubanjara sees him. As soon as the pterosaur tilts his head around the tree, however, the little predator jumps backwards in surprise and tries to run away, but can only manage a scared hobble. Behind him, the Tupandactylus moves after him and is quickly closing a gap between them. But the Ubanjara is heading for thicker foliage, and as his pursuer closes in, he is forced to duck under a low-lying branch and pull his wing through a bush. This isn't enough to slow him down, however, and now he is within striking distance. The Tupandactylus pulls back his head to strike, but he didn't see the second low-lying branch. The top of his crest smacks into the branch and pulls him backwards so hard he lands on his back. Screeching and flailing for a few seconds, he manages to flip himself back onto his hands and feet, but his prey has escaped, scuttling into the denser foliage. Another hunt failed thanks to his head crest. The male snorts in annoyance and moves back to the open area to continue foraging. Eventually his head crest will reach full size, and his neck will grow strong enough to hold it. One day he will display his crest proudly in order to attract a mate. Hello fellow travelers and welcome back. Today we will be breaking down a pterosaur with one of the most over-the-top pieces of headwear, Tupandactylus. Tupandactylus's first remains were discovered in 1997 and was originally named as a Tapijara. Though it is still in the family Tapijaridae, Tupandactylus is now its own genus, with two species, Imperator, named in 1997, and Navigans, named in 2003. These two species lived around 112 million years ago in the early Cretaceous, in what is now Brazil. Navigans had a wingspan of 3 meters, while Imperator had a wingspan up to 5 meters, and though it may have stood around 1.5 to 1.8 meters tall, Most of that height came from its large head and the sail-like crest it sported. Like other pterosaurs, the beak was toothless, and had a large sagittal crest at the front of its jaws. At the top of this crest was a long bony rod that extended upwards, giving the crest its height. At the back of the skull was a long prong that gave the crest its length. These are both made of bone. The mass amount of the crest is actually made of a softer material, most likely some sort of keratin, making the skull lighter and used as a display feature. In Imperator, the crest grew up and back, creating a sort of capital D shape, where in Navigans, the crest goes straight up, creating a more vertical display. They also have a large keel-like crest on the underside of its lower jaw. Now, the most likely use for these huge head ornaments was for display, but it does bring up the question of how much did these crests actually hinder the animal in life, like how male peacocks are weighed down by their large display feathers, or how birds of paradise have such bright plumage that gives themselves away to predators. It is also worth noting that these two species may actually be male and female variants of the same species, but this is not confirmed and needs more research. We have multiple individuals of Tupandactylus, including some incredibly well-preserved specimens that have even preserved pycnofibers at the base of the jaws and veined feathers at the base of the crest, showing that perhaps Tupandactylus had a covering of simple feathers on its body. Tupandactylus did have the typical strong chest muscles and broad wings, so it could definitely still fly. However, the length of its forelimbs and its rather long neck indicate it spent most of its time on the ground. The relative shortness of its beak also points to a less fish-based diet and more of a ground forager. Scientists believe that it may have been a fruit eater or a hard nut cracker, while perhaps eating small animals or insects to balance out its diet. Now, I don't usually talk about the discovery of fossils on this channel, but one fossil of Tupandactylus has an interesting story. This fossil was first found by fossil poachers, who broke it into 6 slabs for easier transport. Later, there was a raid within the Santos harbour by local authorities, that then confiscated the fossil along with many others. It was then given to a local museum instead of being sent overseas, which is what used to happen with 2 Brazilian fossils. This is the most complete skeleton of any Tupandactylus, and one of the most complete pterosaur fossils, as because of their lightweight bones, pterosaurs in general don't fossilize well. Tupandactylus is a pretty outrageous looking creature, and it makes me wonder how quickly it evolved such a massive crest, and if the development of such an ornamentation may have actually been the species' downfall, restricting their movements or lifestyle so much that when the going got tough they were outcompeted by other less flamboyant species. But what do you think of Tupandactylus? Which of the 2 species do you prefer, and what lesser known extinct creature would you like me to do a breakdown on next? Until then, please like, share, subscribe, and thank you for watching.